This is a Renew original recording. Hello and welcome to Believe in People, a two-time Radio Academy Award nominated and British Podcast Award-winning series about all things addiction, recovery and stigma. My name is Matthew Butler and I'm your host, or as I like to say, your facilitator. Today I'm joined by Finley, who shares his lived experience of ketamine addiction and recovery. We explore why ketamine is often perceived as a cheap social party drug and how that perception can mask how quickly dependence develops and the serious physical and psychological harm it can cause. Finley reflects on his substance use, the illusion of control, and how ketamine shifted from feeling like a solution to becoming a source of severe withdrawal, physical damage, and psychological distress. We also discuss the reality of ketamine bladder, the impacts of family and mental health, the stigma surrounding ketamine use, and what it ultimately took for him to stop, highlighting the role of honesty, support, and connection in recovery.
The thing with ketamine is it's very sneaky, as I suppose a lot of substances are, and it almost reels you in, and it gives you a very short-term buzz, if that's what you want to call it. I probably wouldn't call it a buzz because it's quite the opposite, but you get that little short-term feeling, forget about your problems, forget about anything that's going on, and, you can trip out, you can have them sort of effects from it, and some people can go on for months, if not years, without seeing the consequences. So it gives you like a false sense of reality, really, that it's safe to do, and that it is a fun party drug. But the reality of it is, we all know it couldn't be any further from the truth.
What attracted you to ketamine in the first place? Had you tried other substances? Because I know, obviously, in terms of your lived experience recovery organisation, the Ketamine Education Service, there's a big emphasis on ketamine. Was it the first substance that you chose? Did you use other substances but found this one to be more of a preference? What led you up to that point of ketamine addiction in a nutshell?
Yeah, so my first substance was cannabis. And then I had a problem with cannabis from being probably 15 till about 18 maybe. Then it was cocaine. Cocaine came onto the scene and I quickly became addicted to that. I was kind of sniffing it on my own at 16, 17-year-old in my bedroom at my mum's. None of my mates were doing it, but in my head I thought everyone was doing it. I thought that was a normal thing to do. And then ketamine came on the scene when I was 18-year-old. And it was really, really simple how I got kind of put onto it. I got a text message off a lad who used to buy cocaine off. And he just texted me saying, I've got some ketamine. That was it. Now, I remember being with one of my mates and I said, so I'm not going to name him. So-and-so's got some ketamine. And it weren't even, I remember it clear, there wasn't a conversation around what's the harms, what could it do, what's this and this. It was just, how much is it? I found out £30 for a gram, get some. And that was it. Now, obviously, in hindsight, if I'd have known what I know now, it'd have been a complete different conversation, And that's obviously what we're trying to do now, is to put the knowledge in place so that them decisions are based with a little bit of education, not just an off the cuff, let's get some. It's quite worrying really to think, because I know you can't say ifs and buts, can you? But I often think if I'd have known, or something would have been different, I could have saved all that period of health in my life. But I haven't really got any regrets, to be truthful about it, because it's led me to where I am today, and I feel like my addiction's been the making of me. Sounds quite weird.
No, it's not the first time I've heard something like that. I think the thing that is interesting, though, is to talk about your use of cannabis, of cocaine, and then ketamine. All of these substances kind of fall into that recreational category before it often hits dependence. And with recreational substance misuse, it's often down to the peer pressures we experience. But you said then, none of your peers was using it. And I know you said you thought they were. I guess kind of what brought you to use it in the first place, and if your friends wasn't using it?
It's specific to ketamine.
Just substances in general, because I'd like to say, I remember the first time I started drinking with my mates, and that was the key thing. It was with my mates. It was pushing the boundaries. It was that sort of, again, the pushing the barriers that teenagers do. And it is often the same with cannabis and even cocaine, for some people when they get a little bit older, when they start going out into pubs, clubs and bars, it's quite accessible now. I know cocaine, weirdly enough, used to feel quite a taboo subject back then. Now I think people almost brag about taking it. It's weird how that culture has changed. But I guess the interesting thing for me there is that none of your friends was using these substances, but you were still using them alone.
So I think with the cannabis, there was a small group of us who used it pretty much every day, and we became reliant on it very quickly, but we weren't aware, it was 15, 16, it's quite hard to just be factual about the age, but you're looking at that sort of age, and I look back and none of us understood addiction. I've got family members in addiction, close family members who are in recovery, so it was around me, but I still didn't understand what it were, and so we became addicted to the cannabis, and the lads I'm talking about still smoke it today. I stopped the cannabis at probably, again, 17, 18, but cocaine came in, and it's interesting because I look back and even before substances, really, I've always had an addictive personality.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I've done something that I've enjoyed, I'll do it and do it and do it and do it, and I'll exhaust it. And that's kind of been a pattern. It could be anything. It might sound silly, but even drinks or sweets. To this day, if I like something, my girlfriend will vouch for this. I'll buy it, and then I'll get bored of it and then I'll move on. And it is quite interesting.
That's the nature of addiction in some way, isn't it? The previous participant actually shared a story of, he said, I've always been an addict. He said the drugs was secondary, and it was something along the lines of, when I was a kid, it was computer games, obsessed with them, all day, every day. And then as I got a little bit older, it was girls, and then it was alcohol, and it was cocaine. And he said, I've always been an addict. And I think that's quite interesting to say that to the nature of addiction. And it goes back to that idea of addiction being a disease. You mentioned yourself with having close family members that have, struggle with addiction as well. What's your opinion on that, I guess, really? Because some people believe that addiction can be hereditary or something that you inherit from family and that it is a disease. Where's your mind when it comes to that statement?
So the biggest thing for me is that I'd personally, and this isn't me saying it's right or wrong.
No. It's all opinion. Yeah, I completely understand that. Yeah, I
don't agree with calling it a disease.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd never argue. I'd never tell somebody you can't call it a disease. But for me,
that's the right approach to it, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't label it as a disease. I think when you think of diseases, you think, you're riddled with a disease, and you think really negative, and it's you're thinking of cures and tablets and treatments, and I think I'm not a scientist. I can't sit and say it is a disease or it isn't, but for me, I never label it a disease, However, when you look at the hereditary side of it, there is a possibility, and the reason I say that, my dad's a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. My uncle was a heroin addict. Don't really know far past that.
Of course, yeah.
So it kind of, you think, well, it makes sense, doesn't it, that it is hereditary, and that a lot of people you speak to, you'll have had it yourself, that you have conversations and they'll say, oh yeah, my dad's in recovery, my mum's in recovery, or a lot of people's parents die in addiction. So there's definitely a factor, but I think for me, I sway more towards kind of the issues that come along with addictions. So I think if you look at a family and you look at, say, the mum and dad that are in addiction, and you've got a young child, them parents, no matter how much they love the children, and I've found that out myself, I never thought my dad loved me because of his actions. I'm very lucky that really I went through addiction, because I understand he always loved me, but he just couldn't show it and couldn't, due to his addiction. But if you get a parent or two parents or whatever that are in addiction, it's pretty much impossible for them to give that child what they need, the attention, the love, the patience, all the stuff that you need as a child to flourish, I suppose.
Yeah.
I learned it in rehab, and the way they broke it down was as a flower, from a seed. And if it doesn't get the right nutrients, the right water, it'll grow and it'll be lopsided and all that sort of stuff. And it's that, we're a seed, and we need the right nutrients, love, affection, care, and all that sort of stuff. And I think if a family's in addiction, more so parents, brothers and sisters, the child ain't getting that. Yeah. So then you grow up and you can have negative views on yourself. I'm not loved, I'm not heard, and all these sort of things.
Basic needs aren't being met, are they? Yeah.
That's it.
You become a product of your environment. It's interesting you say that, because I've heard that from, I guess, a theoretical point of view or an educational point of view when I've done training. But it's interesting to talk to someone with lived experience of an addiction, to recognise that themselves as well, despite having family who are addicts as well, understanding that actually you've grown up in an environment where those basic needs weren't being met, and that's more likely to conclude in an addiction, as opposed to being an environment where those needs are being met as well.
Yeah, no, it's 100%. But again, I still do think hereditary plays into it to some extent. I don't know how. I don't know how all that looks.
Well, I've listened and read things before, and I don't think anyone's ever been able to provide concrete evidence of it. And I guess that's anything. That's why we use the word theory, isn't it? Even the Big Bang theory, everyone had kind of talks about that as being a scientific absolute, but at the end of the day, it's only a theory. Do you know?
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. I just want to go back to obviously talking about the ketamine addiction as well, because you've done press for this, and part of the reason how we found you and wanted you to come and talk to us is as well. And you've said that ketamine, or you described ketamine as offering an escape before it took everything. What is it about ketamine that makes it feel like a solution right up until it becomes the problem?
Yeah. So I think this is where you can look at addiction in general, and I think anybody can identify with what I'm about to say, if it makes sense to them. So early on, ketamine was a solution to me. You know, I didn't know I needed a solution, but I found ketamine and it gave me this solution to a problem I didn't really understand. Now, obviously, you take it and this solution works for a period of time like any substance does. Somewhere along the line, the ketamine becomes part of the problem. And the scary thing is you don't see it happen, you know, and it's almost blended in the background, and it's a solution, and it starts drifting into part of the problem. And before you know it, the thing that was a solution is part of the problem, and now you've just got a big ball of problems, and it's like, how did I get here? So it's quite, you know, that's a scary thing, is there's no warnings. It's not like somebody comes and tells you that this is going to be, you know, become an issue. It's almost like you blink and you're in the midst of the madness of the negative effects of it. But to go back to your question, it's sort of, I think for me, and you could argue about what we've just talked about, not getting what I needed, you know, it's a funny one. I've got a really good family, and I almost sometimes feel guilty talking about this because my family, they're amazing, and I know they love me to bits and I love them to bits, but when you go back a few years, it's quite dysfunctional. You know, there was alcohol, mental health, all kinds of stuff going on that most people have to deal with. You know, I'm not sitting here playing victim or anything like that. I'm just explaining. And I do believe I grew up with certain views on myself, on the world. I was quite angry. And I found something in weed, I found something in cocaine, but I took ketamine, and it was like weed, cocaine put together times about 10. The escape level was...
Yeah, I was going to ask why ketamine and not the other two, but that's interesting, yeah.
Now you've got... The thing that makes it quite, I'm not going to say what feels like it makes it a good drug at the start. You can eat off it, you can sleep off it, you don't get rough off it, you can get up and go to work off it. You look at cocaine, you know, anyone that's took cocaine will tell you, you have a couple of lines and you need more. You're not going to sleep till you've exhausted every option, and then you're not going to work because your head's battered, you're on a bad come down. Weed, same again. Just knocks you out when you wake up groggy, you know, and I found ketamine, it was like, wow, you don't do any of this. And I actually remember speaking to someone and calling it like a winning lottery ticket. That's what I called it back then, because I could do all them things on it, but when I took it, everything disappeared, you know. So again, I've struggled with mental health, I've struggled with bits of anxiety and depression and, you know, little spells of it, and I was in a job I didn't like, you know, bits of my family relationships were a little bit unstable, and then you've got the stuff externally as a young lad growing up, a teenager, you're in competition with everyone to have the best clothes and most money and holidays and jobs and girls and all this stuff that comes with it. And it was overwhelming, and I took it and none of that stuff mattered. You know, it was just me and this bag of ket tripping, and it was good. It were, you know, and I will very quickly flip it round and say, because I don't like to glamorise it or make it sound like if you take ket, that's what's going to happen, because the chances of that lasting are very, very slim. And as good as it was 10 times worse, you know, once I'd carried on taking it. But yeah, that's kind of it. It gave me something. It gave me peace. It quietened my brain down and it gave me peace. But I paid a massive, massive price for 6 months peace. It's a lifetime's worth of consequences. So when you look at it like on a bit of a scale, it's like it weren't worth it.
We explore opiate withdrawal and alcohol withdrawal in this series to some length. Does ketamine come with any withdrawal when you're not experiencing it? Or was that part of the winning lottery ticket feeling that you didn't experience withdrawal either?
No, so it's quite a grey area, this, and there's a lot of conversations being had. So originally, when you're obviously first taking it, if you can stop taking it, you might have a few sweats at now, but it's nothing, you know, it's not nothing like a rattle. You know, I've seen people in rehabs have been in rattling, it's nothing like that. The worst one I had were a few bad dreams, if I ever had a few days off, which were very rare. Long term, and again, this is the grey area part now, there's an argument because as your tolerance builds up and the pain starts to kick in, you quickly find out, when it's no secret, that the only thing that will help is more ketamine. I tried it where I took packets of painkillers, hot water balls, red hot baths, showers, tried everything. And some of it had worked for a minute, while you're in the hot bath till it's settled, then it's kind of back. And I quickly found out if I doubled up the line, that'd take the pain for a period of time. So you could argue realistically that, so for example, I've built the tolerance up to the point now where I'm taking it as a painkiller and I'm going into rehab the day after, for example, and I know that painkiller's not there. I can take all these painkillers, but they're not going to work. So you could argue that there is kind of a physical dependency on it for the pain relief side of things.
Yeah.
But again, there's nothing in concrete to say that's what it is, or that's just opinion. So it is a conversation that people are having at the minute. Does that get classed as it, or?
Yeah.
But in terms of becoming ill, and the shakes and rattling and being sick and all that stuff, it don't. No, I've never experienced it.
It can come in different ways as well, can't I suppose. I guess going back to what you're saying about, how the addiction to ketamine can creep up quietly. From what you've seen and lived, how fast can ketamine use spiral? I think why do people not realise that they've lost control until the control itself has already gone?
Yeah, it ties back into what I spoke about a couple of minutes ago with the substance being the solution to start off with. And you're so wrapped up in enjoying this peace and quiet, this time where you finish work, because I'm still working early on in my recovery. I've been to work and I've had a bad day, and go home and I get my ketamine, and it's like a little a ritual where I'm looking at it and I just know my problems disappear. And you're in love with it. It's like a love-hate relationship. Yeah. You're like in love, and it's like, wow, I know you're going to take my problems away, and you're worshipping this bag. And then, you're so caught up in the positives of it that the negatives are happening kind of under a blanket, if that makes sense. They're there, but you can't see them. Yeah. And it's weird with Ket because the damage is happening, from the minute you take your first line, the damage is happening internally, but it can take... Again, for some people, it can take months, some people a few years, but until it kicks in, it's almost the damage is progressing and progressing until you feel it. It's not like when you feel it, that's when it's starting. It's all been happening, but it's got to a point now where you're physically feeling it.
It's happening, yeah, because obviously, I guess that is probably the most dangerous aspect of ketamine as a substance, is that the damage that you are doing to your body isn't showing up straight away. How does that delay convince people they're still in control then, but when they're not?
Yeah, because, because you're enjoying it, you've got no reason to stop, have you? It's not... If you enjoy something, why stop doing it? That's kind of how I look at it. And it's still doing what you want it to. You can still go to work, you're still affording it. So there's seems like there's no issues, there's no debts coming with it, there's nothing. This was my experience anyway.
Yeah, that's it. Well, that's all you can give, really, isn't it? Is your own personal account of it, yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it catches up with you, and then all of a sudden you blink your fingers and the consequences are there. But because now you've been taking it for me, it were probably 6 months, a year-ish. Yeah. Which taking a substance daily for that long, you're relying, aren't you? Yeah. So by the time it comes to the consequences, you're full of denial, or you're full of guilt and shame because all of a sudden you're having to kind of admit to yourself that there's an issue. So then you're using it then to deal with them problems, and because of the denial, you can. I remember saying to myself, regular, I can stop if I want. And I'd convince myself about, I'm in control of this. And I would genuinely make myself believe I was in control because I've never experienced trying to stop taking a substance as such. Because I'm taking them all, and recovery weren't something that I was aware of. So, yeah.
It makes me think of a previous conversation I've had around hepatitis C, which is a very common bloodborne virus that people can get from sharing drug paraphernalia, especially if they're using heroin. And the scary thing with hep C is a lot of people are living with it, but it's not affecting them on that day-to-day, and it doesn't become an issue for someone until 20 years down the line. So it's hard to get someone to recognise the damage that's doing to their body for something that they don't really need to kind of, or at least they don't feel like they need to deal with for another 10, 20 years maybe. And I guess it's similar to this in the sense of they can take this substance daily. Like you said, there's no hangover, there's very little withdrawal. Like you said, for someone with a substance misuse problem, for someone who's trying to look for escapism, it's like winning the lottery. The interesting thing that I found with ketamine is there's people that can, maybe use it for a year daily and not necessarily see those negative effects that it's having. But then for some people, it can start to unravel for them almost instantly. One of the things that scares me the most with ketamine use is the phrase ketamine bladder. Because I guess the reality of that includes blood, organ damage, chronic pain, and that, I guess it's a permanent loss of dignity in a way, having to have what that can do. What are we still not being honest enough about when we talk about ketamine's physical harm?
I think there is a lot of honesty out there now. I think there is a lot more people speaking out on social media. Obviously our account's a ketamine education, so everything's related. And I flick through and there's hundreds of videos of people from all over the country and even the world talking about it. I think the problem we've got is the conversations aren't being had in the right places. And for me, I'm a massive advocate for prevention.
Yeah.
It's way easier than intervention, and I think this kind of comes back to, I'm not passing blame to anybody. It's for the government to look at and be like, look, this issue is here, it's rife, they can see it, they only need to Google it, and it's all over, stats are there to see. Obviously, we're hands-on, so we're seeing the lives being ruined. But I think in terms of honest conversations, it's about saying, right, it needs to be in schools, it needs to be, I'm not going to sit here and say it needs to be mandatory in every school. But
I would argue, it is, and I suppose it's how you approach people. I remember when we was teenagers at school, we'd have some group coming and they'd act out this play in front of us around don't do drugs, and it was just really cringy, to the point where it's like, you can't take this seriously. It's a bunch of adults in the 30s pretending to be teenagers. It's just straight over the head. So the messages can be done and they can be implemented early in schools. I guess it's just, how do you have those conversations? I think one of the, and this is just from a third person perspective, but it's like anything. I think one of the biggest problems when we have these conversations, or when people even use substances, is that idea of, I get the dangers, but that'll never happen to me.
Yeah.
There's almost there's an ego, they're wearing this coat of their ego there of all these things that's happening to everyone else. They're almost trying to shield themselves from it in a way that this will not happen to them. But it will do. And I think the scary thing more so is when I said about blood-borne viruses, and that's not something that some people will have to deal with for another 10, 20 years. With ketamine use, as you said, the damage is instant. And it takes me back to one of the meetings that we had recently as a drug service. And it was you said prevention is better than early intervention. And we've been discussing early intervention for, the last 10 years. What does early intervention actually look like? And I think looking ketamine in particular, one of the leaders of this service had said, well, early intervention isn't just about giving harm reduction advice at an early stage in someone's journey. When it comes to ketamine, we need to be sending people off for urine screenings and to assess the damage that's done to their bladder already, because they could only have been using ketamine for maybe a couple of weeks, a couple of months. But showing them results of, look, the damage is there to your bladder already. If you continue like this, you're going to end up with, as they affectionately call it, the ketamine bladder. And it's that reality of that situation to people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I was in a meeting yesterday having quite a similar conversation, and what they were saying were the early interventions now, even though they're early in terms of a time scale, they're not early because these people that are coming through doors for, your local drug and alcohol services are absolutely battered from ketamine. And what they're having to do is get them in and fire them straight off the detoxes. Yeah. So these, and a lot of them are younger, from where I know you see a little bit of a different demographic, but a lot of the areas where I'm from, up north, up Burnley and Liverpool, Manchester, them areas, a lot of them are younger people, which obviously has its own risks because a lot of them are underdeveloped, their organs and kidneys and all the rest of it aren't as they should be. So naturally they're going to take a bigger hit. A lot of them are already not developed in terms of body mass and size. So again, it takes a bigger hit. But one of the worrying things is drug and alcohol services are saying they're coming in Some of them are 16, 17-year-old, you know, with the young people. Obviously, the normal services, 18, 19, whatever it might be. And they're presenting, and as soon as they present, they're already peeing blood. They're already getting the cramps. The kidneys and livers are already on the way out. And services are saying, look, we're not a medical unit. We can't deal with this. We need to send you to a detox, which you could argue is brilliant because now they're getting sent off to detox.
Yeah.
Outside looking in, that looks brilliant because, yeah, they're going to go. But when you know about a detox, you know, detox is brilliant. I'm not calling detox, but these young people, what's happening with a lot of them now is they're going to do a 2-week detox because of the physical pain. What's getting mixed up is the fact that when you go to a detox, that's for your body. You know, rehab is where you do the work on your brain, on the real stuff that can bring around long-term recovery.
The reason for the use to begin with, do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
There was a reason to start using that substance to begin with. It's like any detox, isn't it, really? Do you know what I mean? I've seen people go through emergency alcohol detoxes, but we haven't addressed the reasons why they was drinking in the first place, so they go for that detox. I remember one guy, he'd gone for his alcohol detox, and he was on the train home, and the little woman came down, do you know, anything from the trolley dear, and he got himself a can of lager, do you know, because he thought he was fixed then. He thought he could drink, in quotations, normally because he'd gone through that detox. So people are going to come out of these ketamine detoxes. You're not addressing the reasons for use, and it sounds like by your own experience, you've done a lot of work on yourself, talking about your family and those connections. If they haven't done all that, then the ketamine use is just going to start again, isn't it, when they get back out of detox?
There's a good chance, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know a lot of people that speaking to someone again yesterday in the meeting, there was a girl that had done a 2-week, and she's just 107 days clean, you know, which is brilliant. Still very early, but there is cases where people do go to a detox and they do get sober, but it's like you've just said, the way I see it is, for me, and, you know, again, just my opinion, I think, unless, if you fall into addiction, there's a reason, you know, and you can go in and you can deal with the substance until you dig deep and you understand why you fell into that addiction. Some people don't agree, some people might, but it's my opinion. Until you dig deep on it and find out what it is, why do you feel the way you do? Why do you want to stop feeling the way you do? What are you running from, hiding from, whatever it might be? You are always at risk of not necessarily substance abuse, but negative behaviours and addictions. And I think as human beings we are anyway. I'm not sitting here saying I don't make mistakes, because I do. But I understand the way my mind works. You know, I'm not saying, again, I'm perfect and I've done loads of work and I'm like some kind of saint, because I'm not, you know, but I've done enough work up to now to understand why I took substances, to understand how fast I can slip back into where I were. And there's all these factors, you know, that you do when you go into a rehab, and there's a reason it takes 3 months, because there's a lot of work to do, you know. And if 2 weeks was enough, rehab would be 2 weeks. You know, some rehabs is a rehab that we work closely with. Some lads in there, and it's a male only, have been there 2-3 years, and the program just continues. You know, so it's not a short-term fix, but I think, again, with the ages we're seeing, and I've been that person with the ego, with impatient, naive. You know, I was all of them 3 things, plus probably another 10 more in my first few rehabs. I've done 4 rehabs, I think, 4 or 5. My first 3 rehabs, I will like that. I thought, all I need to do is turn up, just be there. Somebody's going to pass me a book or let me drink a magic pot or something, and I'll be all right, and I'll walk out and life goes back to normal. I
don't think people realise how much work you have to do on yourself in somewhere like a rehab. And it's the same here as a substance misuse service. I had a call just around Christmas time, and it was a woman saying she wants to refer her husband into treatment. I said, does he want to be in treatment? She went, well, he's agreed to come once. And I was like, okay. I said, you realise there's nothing we can do with someone in one session? And it's that level of work. But I do think in some way people think that we just have this little magic wand. And it's the same when people go off to rehab. I think people think they're just going to go there. They're going to, like you said, drink a magic potion and come out and be absolutely fine. Yeah. There's a lot of self-work there, isn't there, that you have to go through for it to be sustainable when you come out. One of the things that I found interesting that you've said is that there comes a point where ketamine stops being about fun and starts looking like self-harm. And that's an interesting connection to look at it. Can you tell me a little bit more about how It's a strong thing to say. Self-harm is obviously a very serious thing. It's a strong thing to say. Can you tell me how it looked like self-harm?
I think any addiction becomes self-harm because as much as we can deny and ignore what we're doing to ourselves, you know, and the harm it's having, like I did with ketamine, got to a point I was peeing blood jelly, which is the gag layer in my bladder. Relationships brought down. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt. Tell me about... I've never read that one before. What's that?
Right, okay, yeah. So pick back up. So I'll talk about the jelly. So obviously, the first step, you start getting the pains, the ketamine bladder. And without going too much into it right now, I'm sure we'll pick it back up. The pain is absolutely stupid. I've never felt pain like it. The kind of next steps is seeing bits of blood in your urine. And that then becomes normal. This, again, my experience, it became normal. So much so that if I went to the toilet and didn't see blood, I'd be more shocked than if I did. Yeah. And it's like, but by this point, I'm still deflecting the fact that it's ketamine that's doing that to me. I'm blaming something I've had for tea or something I've drank or...
It's that cherry headache.
Yeah. Falling over when I was 2-year-old and banging my kidneys, you know.
Must have been that thing that happened all those years ago.
Yeah. Anything and everything, and we do, don't we? But then, when it got scary was seeing this jelly come out. The way I describe it to people, and I say this twice a week, so I apologise to anyone who likes these sweets, but it's almost like the little jelly worms, the clear sweets that you get. That's the best way I could describe it.
I get the idea of that happening.
That's it. And when you think about urinating, anyone who's never had pain, it's like it's a liquid, it just comes out. Let me tell you, when you're seeing clumps like that and that, you know, just for anyone obviously who's listening, you're talking, some of them are like 1.5 inches in length. When trying to pass through, the pain is unbelievable. It feels like you've got glass coming through and it's trying to, and every time you squeeze, it's moving off.
I'm feeling the pain, like, in my, as you're just describing it, I can feel it, like, you know, when you're just wincing.
Yeah.
But I'm wincing there.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's horrible, you know, and it does me good talking about this stuff, if I'm being honest, because I can often forget, you know, and I can, because I get so caught up in day-to-day life, and sometimes I forget where I've been. So it's good just to remind me. It's good to sit down and have to put myself back in that just for a split, you know. And it's passing through your bladder and then it comes out eventually, but some of them can take hours to come out. So you can feel it.
Oh, no.
The top.
Yeah.
But what it can do is it can block urine from coming out. So the urine can actually back up and cause all kinds of problems. And you can go to the toilet, long story short, and be dying for the toilet, and you're standing, you're squeezing, and nothing's coming out. You'd be lucky to get a drop, but you know you need to go. You can't go, so you go back to your bedroom. You know, by this point now, I'm isolated away. This is just my story. And I'll sit back down for 10 minutes, and that whole 10 minutes, I feel like I'm going to wee myself. But I know I'm not going to because it's not coming out. And then eventually, this jelly will pass through, and it'll come out, and then the urine will come out, and it's like, oh, thank God. And I never knew what the jelly were for quite a long period of time, which is quite scary, really, to think that I'm seeing it coming out. But again, I knew if I Googled it, and I did, but I knew if I looked hard enough, I'd find the answer. But it's one of them, don't knock on a door if you don't like who's going to answer. It's one of them.
I like that.
So I didn't look too hard. And in hindsight now, basically what was happening was it's the gag layer of my bladder. So how I kind of describe it, and I'm not a doctor, you know, I don't want to sit here like I'm clever or I'm a doctor, because I'm not, but how I like to think of it is, if you look at the way the skin acts externally, the gag layer of the bladder is kind of that internally on your bladder. So if you drink fizzy pop, caffeine, all the things that we know irritate all our bowels and stomachs and that kind of thing, that's what it does to the bladder, and that gag layer protects it from the raw, you know, the raw organ around it, if that's what you want to call it. The ketamine literally eats the gag layer, you know, it literally sticks to it and then it just eats it, and then that comes off into your bladder, and obviously then it's got to pass through. So that's what I was seeing with the jelly. And the scariest and the saddest thing about this, really, you know, is the amount of people that are getting that on a daily basis, up and down the country, even the world. You know, we speak to people from America, and we've had people from New Zealand and all kinds of places that they've got little pockets where it's a massive problem there. And, you know, and I've spoke about this in past, and you get a real mixed thing on this. So for anybody, you know, who hears this, who doesn't understand addiction, it's back to that question, why would you keep doing it?
Yeah.
They don't understand it, they're like, and there'll be this blame. They'll say, well, it's your fault. And, you know, and I'm the type of person, I'll take responsibility 100%, it's my fault, because I put the first line in. And I knew if I took one line, I'm at risk of addiction, you know, so I'll take the responsibility 100%. But at the same time, it's like, I never knew taking ketamine would cause these problems. And I'd like to think if I did know that, I wouldn't have took it. But truth of the matter is, I don't know, do I? You know, I'm not going to sit here and say that. But yeah, that's kind of the jelly. But I've got some photos and stuff on my phone. I can show you after if you want.
Yeah, I think the self-harm things, you know, obviously, and I completely agree with what you're saying. All addiction is self-harm, but to be putting yourself through that, and I guess, it, like you said, then the bizarre thing is to be experiencing that, but to still continue taking ketamine. You said you didn't Google it specifically because you knew it was linked to it. There very much sounds like there's an element of denial to that, though, because you didn't want it to be that. And it goes back to what you're saying, that you found the miracle drug. And it's almost like, it sounds like you're trying to defend it in a way. Like, It's like, I don't want to accept there's anything negative about this, because this is my lottery ticket. This is my winnings here. When did you start to accept that, okay, ketamine is what is causing this horrendous damage to my bladder?
You know, it's funny really, because, and it sort of goes back to the self-harm without getting sidetracked. I think you get to a certain point with the consequences, your self-esteem and your self-law, it is so bad. It is non-existent. You know, It's gone the complete opposite way, to the point where now I didn't care about myself. I wasn't interested whether I lived or died. In fact, without, again, going off topic too much, and I'm not even into God, used to pray that God would take my life away. I didn't want to wake up. I was, again, very fortunate to have some good family around me. And I got sidetracked. I know I'd do that. Can you just ask me a question again?
I guess really it was just about... I've got sidetracked now because I was listening there. Sorry, Robbie.
All right.
So I was talking about the self-harm element of it. That was it. It was, when did you realise that, or when did you accept that it was ketamine that was causing that damage to your bladder?
Yeah. So again, you know, my self-esteem was so low, it wasn't necessarily that the physical effects that made me look and accept what it were. For me, it was the family stuff. It was the relationship breakdowns. Seeing, you know, my mum ringing me up crying, my dad ringing me up telling me you don't want to be here anymore. Missing time with my niece, who at the time would have been 4-year-old, 3-4-year-old. Love her to bits. She's my best mate, and constantly rushing about or having cat cramps and having to shoot off. And it was that for me more than anything that mounted up and made me think, right, you know, look what you're doing to your family. And that's then kind of when I started looking back to myself and thinking, yeah, but you look what you're doing to yourself as well, you know. And it was kind of a combination. So for me, it wasn't necessarily just the physical stuff, or that wasn't the turning point. It was the external factors with my family and even my friendships and stuff. It's and it's tricky because I used on that as well. You know, there was a good chunk where where my mum would ring me, for example, or a story I tell quite regularly. I bumped into my mum once on a main road. I live with my stepdad. She's back with my dad, and they live kind of where I lived after they'd split up. Long story, without getting into it all. And I bumped into her on a main road, and she looked at me, and she was about to say sorry, thinking it was just a stranger. I'll never forget this, and I tell this a lot in the talks that I do, and she looked at me, and the colour just drained instantly out of her face. And she'd not seen me for probably 2 or 3 weeks, because that's what I did. I'd vanish for 2 or 3 weeks, I'd go on a big bender, then I'd resurface, you know, come out of hibernation, coming around trying to find money and borrow money, and like we do. And she just looked at me, and the colour drained, and I didn't know what to say to her. I was actually going to pick up some ketamine a couple of streets on, and I'm in agony. And at that point, I probably looked the worst I've ever looked. I think I'd got down to about 8 stone, 7.5, 8 stone. Bit of context, now I'm about 13, you know. Naturally, I should be about 11, 12, you know, so, and this was a few years back as well. So I'm way underweight, pale as a ghost, big long beard, not had my hair cut, probably not had a shower realistically in days, probably not brushed my teeth in days, you know, I was a mess. And she just looked at me and she couldn't talk. I could see a brain working and just trying to say something to me, and she just couldn't. And I couldn't say, oh, I wanted to hug her and say I'm sorry. But sorry's an absolute waste of time by this point. The amount of times I've said, if I had £1 for every time I'd said it, I'd be a billionaire, you know. And it was just this really, it was on a heartbreaking interaction. But the reason I'm telling you this is because then my mum had to go home off the back of that and go and sit and not know where I'm going, not know where anything about me. Is he going to be here tomorrow? Is he going to kill his cell? Is Ket going to kill him? Blah, blah, blah. I went and picked my Ket up and straight away I had a bump of it, and that issue that had just happened disappeared now. Yeah. And that's kind of a really good representation of how it worked. But it's kind of ironic because the reason I'm taking it now is because I've caused a problem from taking it. So it kind of sheds a bit of light, doesn't it, how you take it at first for a bit of fun, but you find out it's a solution, but then you start causing problems from it, and now you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've always found interesting is the idea of when people talk about like the continuous trauma element, and it's not to, you know, not putting this onto your story directly, but what it reminds me of is when people first start using a substance for escapism, maybe from a trauma, but then when they're deep in addiction, they're experiencing more and more trauma. So then it's harder to get out because that escapism or that need for escapism becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. I mentioned cocaine, and I guess the culture on cocaine shifting, because cocaine now, I mean, like I see little Instagram reels and it's all about, like, you know, they're making a bit of a light of it. And I've been on nights out where you hear people saying, oh, I've just done a bump in the, and they're like real audible about it. Whereas, again, when I was a bit younger, there was a bit of shame there. People would be wiping the nose, worried that someone would notice that they'd had it. And I think in a way, you know, ketamine still has this stigma of being hidden compared to other drugs. Why do you think that is, when other drugs seem to be glamorized, especially party drugs like, you know, cocaine and MDMA, all those sort of things? Why is there still such a stigma with ketamine then?
It's quite interesting that I think. So again, obviously I'm from Burnley, from round here, around Hull way, so it's probably slightly different, but I'd imagine it's very, very similar. Yeah. What I saw, and again, I'm 26 now, and I started taking it at 18, you know. So what I kind of saw early on was people were taking it, and it just started becoming, you know, again, 2018, 2019, it was starting to become kind of a cool drug. Yeah. I remember going to the first festival when it had just come around, and it was crazy. It was like a zombie apocalypse. Everyone had gone from swallowing pills and doing coke, being, you know, out and about and active, to just led on floor, like literally like zombies. But it started to become cool, and you could see it progressing in clubs. More people would be taking it, and you could obviously, you know, if someone's on Ket by the way they are. Someone takes a bump of coke, they're alert, aren't they? And it's the opposite. So you kind of seen it starting, and then all of a sudden, I think within probably 2 or 3 years of that, people started feeling the consequences, and it started going the other way then, to the point where now I know people that take it, but it's kind of, and again, it's tricky because I'm not in the circles that I were anymore, you know, I'm in recovery, so I don't know what it's like at festivals. I imagine it's the same, but from what I see personally, the people obviously I speak to are trying to get recovery, so there's a lot of guilt around it, so they're not as out, but I do feel like it's taking a bit of a backward step due to the press coverage, the media, all that sort of stuff. I think now, when people take it, I can only imagine there's a bit of guilt attached, even to someone who's not an addict, because they're going to remember watching BBC documentaries of someone walking around with nephrostomies on, or, you know. But I think when we talk about kind of the stigma, and again, it's a bit of a, I don't know, again, a bit of a grey area, but I think there needs to be more stigma attached to it. And I don't say that in a sense of stigma where, you know, people say, oh, ketamine, ooh, because if someone actually said that to me not long back. What did they say? It's nitty. I was doing a talk in a college, and some lad when I'd just done the talk, and he come out and he's like, oh, it's for nitties, ketamine. And I was like, all right, fair enough. If that's what you think, you're not going to take it, so that's all right.
Job done, in a weird way.
Yeah.
Job done. But so also still kind of offended at the same time, you know, like, hang on about, mate. You know? That was my drug, you know. Yeah.
I shook my hand before he gave me an hug and all that, then said I'm a nitty. I was like, yeah, cheers, pal. Good job we're in college. Yeah, but anyway, so back to it. So, yeah. So I think stigma in terms of understanding and awareness and education, you know, not stigmas in terms of let's call you names and let's look down on you, because naturally that already happens with addiction, doesn't it, in society, unfortunately.
Yeah. People often say that they you know, it goes back to that control element. They thought they was choosing it, but really it was choosing them. What does it do to that decision making, the insight and the belief that you are still in control? I'm just thinking about when you said when people are on cocaine, they're a little bit more alert, aren't they? And the differences of when they're under the influence of ketamine.
Yeah. So in terms of decision making, I think, and again I can only speak for myself, but cocaine I got in a lot more dangerous situations because it usually came, for the first few years, it came hand in hand with drink. Well, first couple of years, then it started, I was dry sniffing cocaine, but obviously then you're out and about on nights out. I'm a young lad, there's testosterone, all my mates are out getting wrecked. So we got into a lot more, I'm not going to say dangerous situations, but stupid situations. When it was ketamine, someone would have a free house, for example, you know, with young lads, we'd go round, all chipping, get a big bag. And as wild as it got was us all being in the kettle at the same time, and we kind of just moping round house. I'd actually love, you know, to get CCTV footage of what we look like. You know, and I'm not going to go into what I experienced and stuff because I don't want to glamorise it, course, you know. But there'd be 8 of us in, I remember one time, Christmas years ago, there was about 8 of us in my mate's grandma's house. She'd gone away, better not say names actually. And every single one of us were walking round, and I remember kind of sobering up and looking round, and everyone, again, is like zombies. No foot, no colour in the face, just eyes like, just gone. And at the time I thought, this is good. Like, this feeling's brilliant. I look back and all it was just not feeling reality. That's what I loved about it.
The detachment of it.
Yeah. It's a dissociative drug, and that's what it does. So if you want to disassociate, you take that.
That's what people take,
So your decision making, again, weren't really in loads of, I don't know, because then you look at the way you're taking it at festivals and walking round, and you know, I used to go and pick it up on my own every day. I used to walk up near where I'm from. I'm not going to again say names in case people get linked in with stuff, but walk up at a main road, and as soon as I got it I had to take it because of the pain I'm in, and I'd have a big bump on my hand and I'd be fairly out of it, and I'd be crossing over main roads back home. So, you know, it does affect your decision making, really.
Yeah, to think, because I guess it's like any substance. I mean, how many times you see people under the influence of alcohol and almost think they've got some invulnerability to danger. You know, people just walking out in front of roads, like all cars are just going to stop for them or something like that. It creates this almost like, I think it was in like a superhero film that I saw, Hancock with Will Smith, where the truck hits him and he just dints the bringing it. I'm sure that's how people feel when they do take certain substances, because they do just walk out in front of the road. And I don't know if there's this arrogance thing of, or this belief that they'll stop for me because I'm important. Do you know what I mean? Or if it's just a case of just completely oblivious to the situation as well.
Yeah.
We've talked about the some of the physical effects in terms of like the effect it has on the bladder, but what are some of the other physical or even psychological warning signs that shouldn't be ignored when it comes to ketamine use?
There's a list. There's a real list with this sort of stuff. So, psychosis can be one of them, leading to psychosis. You know, when you're seeing some of the stuff that you see, you can kind of end up not knowing what's real, what's not real, when you're having episodes, when you're not. You know, there's that. So there's that issue. There's the issue with younger people. Again, we touched on it earlier. You know, if you're, I'm not going to put age limits on it, because if someone hears it and thinks, "Oh, I'm older than that, I'm all right."
Yeah.
If you're,
it's safe for me because I've hit this.
Yeah. If you're a certain age and you're still developing, you know, your brain and your body physically, I've seen it. There's a lad that I know personally from where I live. I'm not going to mention names. And lovely lad, you know, really nice lad. Did a few years in ketamine addiction and other stuff before that. But you speak to him, and I genuinely believe, you know, again, I'm not a doctor, but I honestly believe, because he's put substances in his brain, chemicals in his brain and in his body while he's trying to develop, there's no social skills there. It's almost like you're talking to a blank canvas, and it takes him seconds and seconds to respond, and it's sad.
Well, I call it like arrested development syndrome with people who've used substances. Like even some of the guys and girls we work with, sometimes I think, you're acting like teenagers, and then you realise, well, actually it's because in some way the mental growth was stunted at being that teenage years.
Yeah.
Think of some of the behaviours they display, the same ones that me and my friends displayed when we was, teenagers drinking on a park.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, why is that a thing? But it's very much a real thing, isn't it? If you take substances in early age, it can stunt your mental growth and physical growth as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one. Speech, memory, hearing, smell, all that sort of stuff that comes with it. But yeah, more so to the body. So it's weird because, well, it's not weird, it makes sense. It affects a male body and a female body quite differently. Yeah. Naturally, obviously, we've got different setups, haven't we? They've got stuff we haven't, vice versa. There's a lot of stuff now pointing towards infertility in males and females. And even if you take the infertility out of it, the body struggling to even provide what it needs to. So I'm not going to use the examples that I've got, 'cause it's quite touchy subject with people that might listen. But there's girls that fell pregnant by accident off the back of pills, tablets not working because the
cancels
body's not,
it out. Yeah.
Yeah, the body's not breaking it down as it should be. So then they fell pregnant. Some of them have said, "Oh yeah, we'll have the baby." They're in early recovery, and then they've miscarried. And again, just double up on it. I'm not a scientist, but there's evidence to kind of suggest that the damage that's been done to the internal organs now, they can't provide what needs to be provided for another life. And unfortunately, now with lads, infertility, I know for a fact this is a thing, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's long lasting. It's not like you're going to be infertile for the rest of your life. But I know when you speaking from kind of personal experience without saying too much, it can make you infertile while you're taking it. Erectile dysfunction's one. So there's them with the private areas, with girls, it can affect periods and the complete, that kind of reproductive system and all that sort of stuff. Then you've got problems with, obviously, kidney, liver, prostate, bladder that we've talked about, stomach. What else? There's so many.
It does a number on just about everything. It's the same with, I guess, again, the experiences that I have on this podcast are primarily around opiates and alcohol, but conversation that I had about alcohol being related to various cancers, and people never would suspect that to be a thing, but it's scientifically proven that, alcohol consumption can attribute to various cancers. I guess obviously we're talking a lot about your own experiences here, but if someone was listening to this and recognises themselves in what you're saying, and they're using ketamine to cope or to harden the damage and telling them they'll stop tomorrow, and the same with that, addicts do, what truth do they need to face before ketamine takes anything more away from them?
First thing I'd say is tomorrow never comes. That'd be the first thing I'd say. There's thousands of times where I've led there at night and I've said, tomorrow's the last, that's it. Yeah. This is the last line I'm having, tomorrow changes. And it never happened up to the time it won't, So that'd be the first thing I'd say, tomorrow never comes. If you're going to do something, do it now. Get cracking, Yeah. First thing is honesty, and it's easier said than done. I'm not going to sit here and say from the minute I decided I had a problem, I was completely honest, but honesty is vital. Connection, reaching out, finding what support's around you. I don't know what kind of audience, but we're here in this building that looks a brilliant setup. Finding your local drug and alcohol services, getting in touch with them. There's a big. I'm not going to say a misconception because it's been there, and for some people it probably still is, around ketamine education in GPs, drug and alcohol services, hospitals, even urology departments. There's been a big thing of lack of education around it. However, things have changed massively. So there's a message I do like to push. If you have tried it, if you have reached out for support, or you've had a negative experience in any of the places we've just spoke about, try it again. Because things have changed a lot and your experience this time will be 10 times different to the first one. But reaching out for support, speak to the people around you. Some people are very fortunate to have good family, good friends. Some people haven't, and I appreciate that. And obviously, I empathise with that. It's being honest with the people around you and taking responsibility. That's when things really changed for me, was when I took responsibility for it. When I stopped saying, it's your fault, your fault, your fault. It's living in blame. I lived in blame for so long. That stopped me taking responsibility. And if I live in blame or don't take responsibility, how am I going to change? It was kind of the turning point for me was saying, look, I've got myself in this mess. I've got to get myself out of it. Nobody's going to come and knock on my door and whisk me away to some rehab and do the work and just give me a portion. So that'd be it, yeah. I said connection, didn't I? Connection's massive.
Yeah.
You know, it's the way I see it is kind of reversing. Look at the behaviours that you do in addiction, you've got to flip it.
Yeah.
So it's looking at, right, what does that, so you're isolated in addiction. So I need to be connected, you know, I'm dishonest in addiction, so I need to be honest, and just flipping every single thing and just trying to implement it in your day-to-day life. One of the good sayings that I like from the fellowships, from AA and CA, etc., there was a couple, but just for today.
Yeah.
Just for today is a massive one, and I don't talk about this enough in how much it helped me early on in my recovery, in my last recovery. Things can get hard, a day can feel like a long time, you can break it down, you can say an hour, 10 minutes, whatever, but I said it to myself plenty of times, and I said it more so on the bad days. Just for today, you know, tomorrow's a new day. I'm not promised tomorrow. I'm not going to think about tomorrow yet, but let me just get through today if that's what I need to do. And that's one of them, but this next one is being willing, open and honest. And obviously anyone from fellowships will hear them a lot. And I don't talk about the fellowships too much, but someone said to me early on, practice being willing, open and honest, you know, not just in recovery, in all aspects of your life, and watch how it improves, you know. It is for people who aren't even in addiction, I suppose. It's a real good philosophy to live by, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think fellowship can sometimes get a bit of a bad rap sometimes, but I definitely think there's things that anybody can take away from it, despite being in addiction or not. And yeah, I think that willing, what was it, willing?
Open and honest.
Willing, open and honest, yeah. I think that's really good, that. Finn, thank you so much for joining me on Believing People. I've got a series of questions that I like to end all my podcasts on. And my first question to you is, what is your favourite word?
Favourite word?
Yeah.
Probably no. Favourite word? I don't think I've got one, really.
Try.
I don't know. I've never been asked that in my life.
Do you know, you're never going to get asked any of these questions because my second question to you is, what is your least favourite word?
What's my least favourite word? It'd be a swear word. C-U-N-T, probably.
Tell me something that excites you.
Something that excites me. I can answer that. It's quite a few things. Boxing, fishing, football, yeah.
Tell me something that drains your energy or something that bores you.
Some paperwork, writing and all that boring stuff.
What sound or noise do you love?
Two. So I love acoustic guitars and water.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Sound or noise do I hate? I'll tell you what I hate, when a fork or a spoon scratches a plate.
To be fair, I think that's probably mine as well. Or when cutlery rubs together, that goes very
through. Or when people bite the knives and forks and pull food off it.
I can feel it on my teeth. When do you feel most like yourself?
Most like myself? Probably when I like to I've just got a new fish tank. I like to just pick my acoustic up, change colour on fish tank, turn lights off and just sit and just play.
That sounds relaxing.
It is, yeah. It's good.
What profession would you like to attempt?
Never really said this to many people, but acting.
Yeah, it's been actor.
Yeah. Let's have a do with that, yeah.
What profession would you not like to do?
What would I not like to do?
Guessing something with a lot of paperwork.
Paperwork, yeah, but this is going to be quiet, and I don't want to offend anyone. I did it for years in my life, but construction. I would like to go back into construction.
That's understandable. I think when you've done it before, I always say this about cleaning. I used to be a cleaner.
Did you?
I'm not knocking cleaning by any means, but God, I absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
And lastly, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
That's a good question, that. Probably just that I've been a good person and I've tried to help people. Good question, that. I like that one. It's quite deep, really.
It is, yeah. Something to ponder on your way back to bed.
It is, yeah.
Finn, thank you so much for joining me on Believe in People.
No, thank you for having me.
And if you've enjoyed this episode of the Believe in People podcast, we'd love for you to share it with others who might find it meaningful. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And leaving a review will help us reach more people and continue to challenge stigma around addiction and recovery. For additional resources, insights and updates, explore the links in this episode description, and to learn more about our mission and hear more incredible stories, you can visit us directly at believeinpeoplepodcast.com.